welcome all for this wonderful evening. We have Sreevidya ma'am with us. As you all know, she is a government advisor and she has been writing a lot of things, and her tweets are, எப்படி சொல்றது, it's very informative, educative and thought-provoking. In fact, in the Nupur Shoma issue, she has done a wonderful thread. So that's where I contacted her and wanted her to share her thoughts, inputs, and that the geopolitics of this religious tolerance or intolerance, whatever we call. And welcome, ma'am. So thanks for coming to our spaces. Next of 10-15 minutes, you can explain about the whole issue, அதோடைய geopolitical angle, and also an Indian perspective of this. நீங்க சொல்லலாம். Number listeners, if there are any questions or clarifications, we want to have an interactive session with you with the Q&A as long as the time permits. Before that, all listeners, if you want to come to speaker, please request for speaker. We will give you the speaker option. You can also ask questions. Yeah, Sreevidya ma'am, the space is yours. You can.
I really want to appreciate this Dharmic group in the beginning, because this is a space that has been void, and I've been looking for spaces like this where there is an intellectual conversation possible, a dialogue possible, and a space that is able to step outside of this whole system and see the whole, not as parts, and react to it. So I really appreciate your effort, and congratulations. About this topic today, I'm going to analyze this from 3 different levels. One is just what happened to Nupur. What is this geopolitics behind it, or if at all it is behind it? And the third is something about what's happening in India currently, whether it is if I can call it domestic factors. Let's stick to that, domestic factors for the time. I will come through pretty quickly on the first 2 levels and focus more on the last bit, which is of importance to us. If I could quote Shekhar Iyer yesterday in Kolalas TV, நீங்கெல்லாம் பார்த்திருப்பீங்க அது. He said that BJP had instructions to all the spokespersons not to attend any TV debate on Gyanvapi temple issue. Instead, they asked everybody to concentrate on Modi government's 8 years of achievements. There's a lot to discuss on that. So I guess that was going to be the focus for them. So if what Shekhar Iyer has said is true, Nupur has clearly breached the instructions of her party. And having gone into a television debate, she should have turned it around to our advantage. When I'm saying our advantage, Hindus' advantage, because we had an advantage on the Gyanvapi issue. So she was not able to turn around the discussion, but got into the heat of it and said something. And BJP being a party that has been very, very careful about what it does and says. Most of you may have heard what Modi ji said in 2014. He was contesting the elections. அவர் சொன்னார், எனக்கு 40 வருஷமா நான் public lifeல இருக்கேன். If you said at least one word that's hurt anybody or said something wrong, I'll hang in public. So according to me, he should have been your role model, if you were going to shape yourself as a leader in the party. அந்த மாதிரி தான் அது பார்ட்டியோட ரிஃப்ளெக்ஷன் தான். இப்போ இருக்கிற பிஜேபியோட ரிஃப்ளெக்ஷன் is that statement from Modi ji. So after Nupur said this, BJP distanced themselves from her statement and said what she has made is her own personal statement. And that's not the party's line, number 1. Number 2, they also initiated a disciplinary process against her and asked her to withdraw her statements unconditionally. Apparently, Nupur Sharma did not do that, and I don't know why. Maybe because she thought what she said was right, and maybe she had support overwhelmingly from the social media. I don't know what happened. She went against her party and did not withdraw her statement. I'm only quoting Shekhar Iyer. I don't have any inside information on this issue at all. So you can challenge me on this. So if this has happened, and if it's true, then asking the letter suspending her came the day before all the diplomatic war broke out. So to say that we buckled under pressure is wrong, number 1. And one thing I'm not very clear is there was some online mobilizations happening within this period of time when BJP was expecting her to withdraw her statement and she refused. In that period, there was large-scale mobilization, and BJP has got intelligence of that movement against India and Hindus all over the world. So whether that caused the party to suspend her, or it was the party's normal protocol, I don't know. I do not know. I don't belong to BJP party or any party for that matter. But it could have been coincidence, because my belief is that if Modi ji is the leader of this party and Amit Shah was a no-nonsense person, the suspension would have been definitely coming, no matter what. Now, what has actually happened is, since 2014, what I have noticed is a bit of a polarization within the support base of BJP. No matter what, will support BJP government. People who have started of late emotionally responding and criticizing BJP and Modi ji, and started seeing Modi ji as a weak Hindu leader. Now, because the overwhelming reaction on Twitter that day was from the latter, whom I call more of an emotional sort of supporters. The other part, to counter this effect, started to quote say that there are diplomatic issues. In other words, they went overdrive, supporting the BJP's action of suspending Nupur. And if they had just said that that's what the party's line and they will take disciplinary action, it would have been fine. But then what it caused was a large number of people to start disillusioning with Modi government and saying, "Oh, you buckled under pressure." So this was the orchestration that happened around Nupur. And I can say one thing with clarity, that the suspension came before any diplomatic pressure came, and summoning a diplomat is not happening for the first time. We have also called diplomats from Gulf countries when our gods were abused in the past. This is not a new thing at all. So that couldn't have been a factor. And then there is even countries like America or Britain or Canada or France or Germany can't dictate terms to India. And so Qatar and Kuwait are nowhere in the spectrum. So I actually absolutely deny the narrative of Modi government buckling under pressure due to diplomatic pressure. I certainly don't agree to that. But what we should know about the geopolitical current, this is just a general knowledge. I don't think it has got much to do with this decision, is that there are two divisional centers in this world. One is around Israel, the other is around Iran. Iran is providing support to Hamas in Palestine, which is a huge headache for Israel, just like how Kashmir had been for India. So Israel wants to resolve this problem with Iran, is unable to reach to Iran because of the Gulf countries in between and the oil money and so on. So since Modi ji came to power at the center, Modi ji with Israel has tried to bring the Gulf countries to the path of, or towards this axis, so to say. Primarily, we were able to convince them because of the oil money is going to go. In 20, 30 years, your oil wells are going to go dry and the world is going to move into electric vehicles. So it was easy to convince them that Israel and India can provide economic stability to the Middle East. So that is the reason why Saudi and UAE are with India on this issue, or not Nupur's issue, but generally about the Iran and Israel issue. And you know that those two have ports, and those are the closest points to Iran, if you know the map. And so Qatar and Kuwait also need to come to our side to isolate Iran, and that's the plan. So India has good relationship with everybody involved in this. Ultimately, the aim is to calm Iran down and to stop this Hamas business forever. So nuclear thing is just an excuse Israel uses. So to India, Kuwait and Qatar are still work in progress, and we will achieve our objective of bringing the whole of Gulf countries together with Iran on our side so that there will be some peace in the Arab world. And as I said in the beginning, all this has nothing to do with Nupur sacking, because that was always on the card, and that's my belief. I may be wrong about that. Now, the last layer of this is the Indian side of things. What's happening in India? Those who have read my pinned thread will know that India is a big business for the Break India forces. This is because they have managed to eliminate 45 out of the 46 civilizational states from the face of this earth, and India somehow managed to cling on to ours. So you would see that the nexus is between communism and Islam throughout the world. So where there is Islam in full force, there won't be communism. There's communism in full force, there won't be Islam. But where they both are not present, they will be holding their hands together. That's exactly the good prototype to see is Kerala. Sometime in 2009, the Birkbeck Institute held a conference of think tanks of communism from all over the world. One of the things they discussed was how the ability of communist ideas and communism in different parts of the world are able to grow to a level where they can mobilize and bring any targeted government down so that they can come to power in a good part of the world all of a sudden. And in that list, this is 2009, in that list there was India and China. India predominantly as came up as a state that was really ready, getting there. And you should know that 2009 is when UPA came back. So they did everything in their capacity to weaken the government. And so what happened when Modi ji came in 2014, which they were not expecting? I have written it somewhere in my threads that you will be surprised that 87 to 90, that period when Modi ji and Shah put together, worked at the booth level and created magic of the local body elections, in the first time BJP winning those elections. And post that, the whole of 90s, CIA from US had their assets planted in Gujarat. So that explains why in Gujarat, in 2001, I think, 2002, happened, that became a world event. Although the SIT set up by UPA concluded that Modi ji managed that riot the best way any chief minister has done in the history of India. Although they said that, the narrative is quite different. So you should know that from 2001, he became chief minister, he was targeted, and there was reason for it. And their whole effort for 13 years went futile when he came to power in 2014. And I think it is because of the collective conscience of people like us, Dharmics, who wished and called, and then he came. So when that happened, the weakening of the government, which was the earlier strategy of communists, suddenly made a course correction. So that then became, okay, now we have already anointed Modi as the divider in chief. So now let's work on that. So abandon the weakening of the government. There's no question of weakening Modi government. So let's now deepen the wedge of the polarization of Hindus and Muslim, essentially deepen the Hindu-Muslim divide, which was planted during the Khilafat movement, in the last century. That became their strategy. And anything that you've seen in the last 8 years, if you're able to apply critical thinking, take a step back and see what you see on social media is all about, and also TV debates, all MSM everywhere, even in tea shops. This is a conversation between, so there is Muslims on the other side, which I call as the thesis, and Hindu responding to it and consolidating is the antithesis. And to some extent, BJP has a hand to play in this, especially the Babri Masjid issue. And from then on, we have steadily, BJP has preyed on our sentiments of being Hindu to the extent that it has really damaged a lot of our minds today. So this divide, the thesis and the antithesis, happened. And what we actually don't know is that we have willingly become the antithesis, and we have jumped into it and taken this fight in our own hands, and we think we are fighting the right enemy, which is Muslims. Whereas Muslims, as a thesis, is set by people who want to break India. So that is the difference, that we don't have anybody behind us, but they are propped. Now, I'm not talking about all Muslims. I'm talking about, I'll come into the details in a minute, but Muslims are propped in your eyes as the enemy. And this is this is an age-old communist technique. So you have an enemy to hate, and it could be Muslims. There are different fault lines, not just Hindu-Muslim divide. There's students, there's farmers, there's Sikhs, there's Dalits, there's everything. They planted everything. There's so many landmines, so to say. So what really blew was the Hindu-Muslim thing, because there was a Hindu consolidation happening. That's why I said in my thread that most of you who are supporting Nupur are not Hindus because you practice Hinduism or you're Dharmics. You're more anti-Muslim than a true Hindu. And this has happened because Hindus consolidated because of a common enemy. Now, I have said this, I've tweeted this so many times in the past, that you lose a battle even before you start fighting it if you actually don't know who your enemy is. And in this instance, because Muslims are propped in front of us, we think it is them. And when I'm saying them, I'm actually talking about, the whole Muslim community must be seen in totality. And we need to spend a couple of minutes on it before I can come back to this enemy and consolidation issue. So the Muslim community is sort of a combination of three factors. One is their sectarian divide, which is Shia Sunni, based on the succession of Prophet Muhammad. And in countries where Shias are minority, they are killed, and vice versa. So that there is sectarian divide. And then there is a divide of schools of thought within Islam. So you have the Barelvis, the Deobandis, and you've got Sufis, and you've got all these schools of thought within Islam that also divide them. They're united on their five things, the zakat and the prayer and their azan and things like that. But apart from that, there are differences in that community. And the third angle is the caste. Now, this is a very interesting one, because we think that Muslim castes are only prevalent in India. That's not right. Wherever Islam has gone, they've picked up people who do more menial sort of work, or people who do more labor sort of work. They picked them and converted into Islam, and they're still treated as, they're based on their class. So you can't say caste is an Indian issue from a Muslim perspective. There were 380 gotras. They were called gotras, and castes today, if you call them, in Islam, based on the 1891 census. And these are divided into two broad categories, a whole lot of it in the second category, and very few, maybe about 20 of these castes in the first division. So those of you who know Islamic world will know that in India, Ashrafs are the upper caste, the Savarnas, the elites of Muslims. And there are four divisions within Ashrafs: the Sayyids, the Mughals, I'm not saying that in that order. Sayyids, the Sheikhs, the Mughals, and the Pathans. And they don't marry within each other. So Sayyids will only marry Sayyids. There are 4 or 5 castes within Sayyids. One is Baghdadi, and I don't remember those names, but there are 4 or 5 under each of these categories, so about 20 of them. So Pathans and Sheikhs sometimes intermarry, but mostly endogamous castes. Now, the other section, which is of interest to our discussion today, is the Ajalifs, or they're also called Pasmandas. Pasmanda Muslim is a converted Muslim, and whether they were converted under force or because they were facing caste discrimination is the subject matter of another discussion. And I really want to bring this back, because at that time of Mughal, there wasn't the sort of caste discrimination we are talking about now, because in Mughal period, lands were owned by the agriculturists, the farmers. So there was no jamindari system. So there was no, division based on that. So let's just say that most of the labor jobs, people who did the labor jobs, were forcefully converted. They are about 340 of them, and they depending on their regions. So they also call Gujars, for example. Gujars are very interesting. So they have three types of Muslims: the full Muslims, the half Hindu, and most Hindu. This will be interesting to you, and I can come back for another discussion if you find me tolerable today. So that's another discussion. But let's understand that these Muslims, these Gujars, of which mostly Hindus and partially Hindus, they are Sanatani Muslims. They follow a lot of our Hindu culture and rituals even today. You will be surprised that Brahmin priests set the wedding day and time. They have this same chavalam nammalukku irukku illaya, kaadu kutturadhu, annapracham, idella irukku. They have all our rituals. So they are the Sanatani Muslims. Now, the interesting thing is, up until recently, a lot of these people did not know that they were forcibly converted into Islam. So they always believed that they became Muslims because their ancestors were discriminated against. So there's an uprising within the Pasmanda community on their own identity. So they are not the people who tend to follow the the Medina version of Quran, which is more violent. So these people refused to integrate with mainstream Muslims and always kept their traditions going. When British left, the Barelvis, Deobandis, decided to follow a different education system for Muslims, which didn't include maths and science. So that's how the madrasas came up. So the madrasa education was for poor Muslims because they couldn't afford to send their children to proper schools. So the objective was to keep them poor, uneducated, and breeding machines, so that their aims to repopulate India with Muslims, which is going to be probably a centenary work. And that was their plan, and that is the reason why Muslims still remain poor today in India. Over the last 10 years or so, a lot of money has come to Muslim communities, especially in the south. Kerala UPA UPA 2 period container full cash vandirukku. Cash அது எப்படி வந்ததுன்னு இல்லையா? நம்மளோட அச்சு, the currency printing machine was given by UPA government to Pakistan, and Pakistan produced all these cash, and it came in containers and arrived in Kerala ports. And on the cash fulla, the last 10 years, 70% of land purchased in Kerala was through this Muslim community. They've taken over all businesses, and they have they've become richer overnight, so to say. And that money has come into Tamilnadu. So Tamilnadu is the brain of all sorts of terror. It's a terror breeding ground. Kerala is only a trade unit, but people don't know that. The Tablighi Jamaat and all the Dawat institutions there, they are the brains behind a lot of what is happening across this country in terms of terrorism. So why this is happening was they realized that there was, despite all their efforts, Modi ji comes on board and he starts to empower Muslims. The efforts of bringing the money, drug, arms, everything was to make sure that a section of Muslims will always be the extremists, so they can manipulate them and do what they want. This is the reason why you see a lot of the Talapakattu biryani shops in Tamil Nadu. They were not there 10 years ago. So all this money that came from the port in Kerala. So எதுக்காக அவ்வளோ பைசா அது அந்த கம்யூனிட்டிக்கு கொண்டு வந்து பண்ணியிருக்காருன்னா, டு லியூர் தெம், பிகாஸ் இந்த ஆன்லைன் எல்லாம் வர ஆரம்பிச்சதுலேருந்து முஸ்லிம்ஸ் ரியலைஸ் தட் இவாளுக்கு இந்த மௌலவி சொல்றது மட்டும் உண்மை இல்லை, தெர் இஸ் ட்ரூத் அபவுட் இஸ்லாம் தட் தே ஹேட் நாட் நோன் ஆர் ஹர்ட். ஸோ ஏன்னா நம்ம மூவிஸ் எல்லாம் ஒரு முஸ்லீம் காமிச்சா மோஸ்ட் என்ன ரொம்ப நல்ல மனுஷன் மாதிரி தானே காட்டுறான். So Muslims got a rude awakening that there are other parts of Quran that they have not heard before. And the rise of ISIS, the Taliban, that made a lot of Indian Muslims to start thinking and kind of moving away from that ideology. Adhanala da in the paisa, they had to pump in money into this community. And the last few years, up until Modi ji started empowering them, they have been really enriched by this. So இன்னைக்கு நம்ம இந்த ஸ்டோன் பெல்டர்ஸ் இன்னைக்கு எக்ஸாம்பிள் எடுத்து பாருங்க. இந்த சிட்டிஸ்லாம் ஸ்டோன் பெல்டர்ஸ்லாம் எல்லாமே யங்காக இருக்கும், யங் எனர்ஜெட்டிக், அவள் வந்து வாரியர்ஸ் மாதிரி இருப்பாள். தேர் ஆல் பாட் பிகாஸ் ஆஃப் திஸ் ப்ராசஸ். அங்கே பிரெயின் வாஷிங்கும் இருக்குது டு அ கிரேட் எக்ஸ்டென்ட், பட் நாட் த ஹோல் ப்ரோக்ராம். ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி because they were able to brainwash or give money, give drugs and mobilize Muslims everywhere, and burqa being a very big part of it. இப்போ நான்லாம் சின்னதில் பார்க்கும்போது இந்த மாதிரி முஸ்லீம் விமன் தலையில் இந்த தட்டம் போடுறதுன்னுவா, கொஞ்சம் தட்டம் போட்டு கூட சில சமயத்தில் பார்க்க முடியும். I had classmates who never wore any தட்டம் or anything, no marks of being a Muslim. அப்படி தான் இருந்தது. இப்போ எங்கே பார்த்தாலும் புர்கா தெரியறது. இட்ஸ் a technique of showing you their power to create that enemy, இல்லையா? அதுதான் அது. பட் அவளுக்கு they are told different things. நீங்கள் புர்கா போட்டாதான் you are a good Muslim and so on. சின்னதுலேருந்தே அது சொல்லி கொடுக்கறது. ஸோ the whole burqa issue backfired because 150 பேர் இருக்கிற அந்த ஸ்கூலில் 150 Muslim girls, only 6 of them refused, agreed to wear burqa. 8 இருந்தது, அதில் 2 ட்ராப் அவுட் ஆகிடுது. ஸோ டு அ கிரேட் எக்ஸ்டென்ட் தி ஆர்கஸ்ட்ரேட்டர்ஸ் ஆஃப், அதாவது நான் இந்த ஆர்கஸ்ட்ரேட்டர்ஸ்ன்னு சொல்கிறது இந்தியாவில் இஸ் திஸ் அப்பர் காஸ்ட் முஸ்லிம்ஸ். அவள் தான் இந்த டிவி டிபேட்டில் எல்லாம் வந்திருப்பா. You will know just looking at them, starting with AMM, the OIC, you know his history of Razakar family thane. So they are all the invaders, Mughals. So they set the tone, they instruct everything down to the guarding a polling booth. எத்தனை முஸ்லிம்ஸ் ஓட் பண்ணியிருக்கா இல்லையான்ற கணக்கு வரைக்கும் பார்க்கறது எல்லாமே அப்பர் காஸ்ட் தான். They occupy government jobs, they do everything, they come to movies, they control the whole Muslim community in strange ways because avadan priest appoint பண்றது, they are the people who give money for nikah and all that, கபருக்கு எல்லாத்துக்குமே. So what happens is if Muslims didn't follow them, and they will cut out all these through the Maulvis. So it's a very bad system, very similar to evangelical Christianity. So but the burqa idile vand they lost their opportunity because most people refused to wear burqa, but their effort has succeeded because you see more of burqa clad women these days. அதெல்லாம் பார்க்கறதுனால இந்த polarization pill that they have fed us, that Muslims are your enemy, எல்லாராலையும் ஈஸியாக நம்ப முடியாது. இப்போ சும்மா டிபேட்டில் யாராவது இருந்து நம்மளை டான் பண்ணிகிட்டே இருந்தால் நம்ம அது we may not fall for it. But when you look around, trainல, hospital, hotel, எங்கே பார்த்தாலும் you see burqa clad women, you start believing everything they're saying. And it's also true that their numbers are increasing. But I will have a discussion on this a later stage. I'll write a thread about this because it's very important that even in Muslim community, the TFR, the total fertility rate, is falling. Hindus ke yarkinave down, Christian ka adavada down, Muslims is falling at the moment, and it will come and balance out at some point. They will never be able to go beyond 25-30 in my calculation. And na idu sollala Sachar committee report solradhu. So there's nothing to worry about their population increase. நம்ம என்ன பண்ணணும்னா, we should not cry for a population control bill, because if a bill comes like that, the enforcement will be on Hindus. We will readily comply, and if we make Muslims comply, it will become an atrocity against the minority. So they will not comply. They will violate it. They will have as many children as they want. So adella nadakadu. But we should be peaceful in thinking that TFR is a crucial element in this. And Modi ji, what he has done is to educate Muslim women especially, and professional course for the, and also for them if they want to apply for a job, their coaching is given. Edhukaga அவ படிச்சு வந்தா they will come out of this their poverty first of all, and they will not be breeding machines. Burqa போடுறதுன்றதே is an unwritten rule that you're a breeding machine. You be in that burqa, so which means you won't be able to go out and work, and you won't be able to study. You will be home. You may have 3 other co-wives, and then your only job is to breed. That is their long-term plan. And Modi ji is bringing them out of this by educating them. And எனக்கு தெரியுமே எத்தனையோ Muslim women who are educated and working, they'll not have more than 2 children. Definitely not. That's where we are heading. And this is when Modi ji was giving scholarship for Muslim women and minority in general, நிறைய Hindus on Twitter outraged and said all kinds of things. I actually said this in my episode with Sanjay ji in the Jaipur Dialogues last year or year before. I said that was a clever move by Modi ji. So all this is also happening in Indian Islamic world. And then there are people like Subuhi Khan and so many other people who have come out of the whole clutches of their elites and started calling and identifying themselves as Sanatani Muslims. So on one side, the polarization is happening, and Hindus are willingly walking into it and deepening the wedge by attacking against Muslim, the enemy that they're showing in your front, you're attacking it. So essentially, a hand is showing a puppet, and you're not seeing the hand, and you're attacking the puppet. That's exactly what is happening. So people like Subuhi Khan coming out and declaring themselves as Sanatani is a very, very big thing. And right now, there is a little bit of confusion among Muslims about their identity. But it's not easy for them. A Hindu can be a secular, an atheist, a charvaka. They can do whatever they want. But for a Muslim to be an apostate or even call themselves as a Sanatani Muslim is a very, very difficult thing. They'll be ostracized, and you know what will happen to such people. They'll be ostracized from their families as well. And that's what has happened to many Muslims, I know. So, but it's happening. I call this as reverse social engineering. I don't know if RSS does that, or, this is a very natural and organic phenomenon, but it's actually happening. So what our role as Hindus is not to attack Muslims, but to attack the upper caste elite Muslims. Let's be very specific about who our enemy is here, so that the other Muslims, the Sanatanis and the Pashmandas or the Gujars, can all come to our side and start looking at their upper caste people as the enemy. That is a social divide. That is the right sort of polarization we should encourage. Otherwise, there is absolutely no way we can coexist with a 30% population whom we don't like. So first of all, that is something we can do in our posts, in our space talks, or in our WhatsApp groups. That's what we should start using the word Sanatani Muslim. We should start using the word upper caste Muslims and upper caste Muslims against Sanatani. So we should help create that divide and deepen that divide, and shall not divide ourselves or set ourselves up against Muslims as our enemy. So this is the background within India. So I come back to Nupur's point here and say, if she had used that debate opportunity to actually say that, make an appeal to Indian Muslims, saying that, look, your upper caste leaders are saying in TV debates that it's all right for you to wash your feet in a pond where we believe our Baba is sitting. If she had said that and appealed to Indian Muslims, Sanatani Muslims, and created a rift right there, I think a lot of Muslims wouldn't like to do that, even secretly. They may not say that openly, but they wouldn't want to do that unless they're paid for it. You get what I'm saying. So she could have used that opportunity to portray our true situation, which is we are victims of attack of our culture. If we had reflected that and restrained from talking about, Prophet Muhammad, this could have been a very different game today. And I always say this, that it's okay to challenge concepts of religion. You can challenge Muslims by asking about the linearity of their time concept or lack of karma and reincarnation. You can ask 1,000 questions about it. To comment about what the Prophet did was probably not acceptable, because it is apriyamana oru satyam adu. Ena adu namba dharmavum illa. And we also lost the debate. Now nobody remembers anything about the derogatory remarks the other people made or the provocation Nupur received. Nobody talks about it now. So we have actually failed from that front as well. And now you know that the Indian government has got a tough job. There's Taliban threat, this threat, that threat. Nothing will happen. But, it's like after brilliantly removing Article 370, after brilliantly winning Ayodhya issue without a whisper, without a stone throw, for such a trivial thing, if India has to start trying to do a damage control, is not a good place to be. So this is my message, that identify your right enemy, use the right. So I call this discourse. So using words like Savarna or upper caste Muslims and Sanatani Muslims. So these are seed letters, so to say. Start using them, and let's make that divide stronger among Muslims, so that a large part of Islamic community in India stays with us, the civilizational state that is Bharat. So that's my thought, and more than happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks. That's what's really insightful and things. I think you covered that the other side, outside India, what is happening, that different factions. Also within India, I mean, this Pashmandis, Ashrafs, and choosing the right enemy, as you rightly pointed out. I mean, while we want to help the real Muslims of India, who are all mostly belong to this land and the culture and the way of living, they are being targeted by the both sides, from the Hindu aspect of it, and also from the upper caste Muslim of the Ashraf kind of aspect of it. So they are also caught. So when we want to try and bring that these Pashmandi Muslims to the mainstream by providing them education, or with all other social status and all this stuff, with Modi ji is doing it, we call that as appeasement to another side, but actually it's not. So that's what I understand from your speech here. The other side, we have to choose the enemy, and who really that Ashraf, the upper caste Muslims, or those people vehemently oppose any Indianized or Sanatani version of our social life and other stuff. So it's a different perspective. It opens up a lot of different thought cells within your brain. That's what I call it. As I think it will take some time for me, at least. I don't know about the listeners, but me at least, to just go through this once again and to see connect the dots within all that stuff, to see the real picture. Of course, as you rightly pointed out, Nupur Sharma was a victim here. Probably the way that the way she would have chosen to say those words or appeal to the real kind of Muslims on this would have been a different ball game. So that's it. I think a lot of our speakers want to have some questions and clarifications also. I mean, any of the person in speaker, you can just ask questions. And anybody who wants to ask questions or speak to Sreevidya ma'am, please put a request. I'll approve the request. You can come to speaker and do it.
Hello, Sreevidya ji. Your writings are extremely very, very well articulated and very, very well balanced. Truly appreciate that. And excellent write-ups. And recently only I came to know of your timeline. So keep it up. I have only one question, which is slightly deviating from this particular point, but it's connected. The southern coastal of I know the entire things because I've studied in those schools in my younger days, and I have known the world also. But most of the world, across the world, the legal machinery is extremely strong. Most times, the punishment laws are extremely stringent. That's why a common man is afraid of doing it. ஒரு 120 வருஷத்துக்கு உள்ள தூக்கி போட்டு 130 வருஷத்துக்கு உள்ள தூக்கி போட்டுனா சின்ன கிரைம் கூட பண்றது people are worried, right from the driver, right from the any small levels of people. Most Western countries are having this tough laws, even in the Middle Eastern countries, I believe. எதனால நம்ம தும்ப விட்டுட்டு ஒருத்தரையும் வாழ பிடிக்கிறாங்க? See, you cannot stop the external forces operating, but the Home Ministry can create the police reforms or the punishment laws in such a way. ஒரு 10 பேரத்துக்கு உள்ள போட்டா நடக்காதா? Every time எதுக்கு தும்ப விட்டுட்டு வாழ பிடிக்கிறாங்க? Especially in Tamil Nadu, I've seen those coastal areas. They were so nice people once upon a time. I've studied in those schools. I walked through those places 40 years, 30 years before. But இப்போ என்னன்னா எல்லாத்திலும் they are allowing it to happen. எதனால they are sitting? 8 வருஷம் is a reasonably good time to create certain reforms. அங்கதான் எனக்கு I'm getting a little bit concerned. This government is just watching things happening. இன்னைக்கு பாருங்க, கீழ் முழுக்க இப்போ பேஷண்ட்டுக்கு போதே பார்த்தேன், அத்தனை இடத்துல ரயட்டிஸ், அத்தனை இடத்துல இது எதுக்கு ஒரு 4 பேரை பிடிச்சது ஆர் நாட் பனிஷிங் லைக் வாட் யோகி இஸ் டூயிங் அண்ட் தென் கிரியேட்டிங் எ பிரசிடென்ட் தட் த லா இஸ் டஃப் enough to act right from தமிழ்நாடு டு கேரளா டு எனிவேர் இட் அட் ஆல். எங்க ஏன் ஒரு கை கட்டிட்டு உட்காந்துருக்காங்க? இந்த மயிலாடுதுறை அந்த பக்கம் இந்த பக்கம்லாம் எங்க பக்கம்லாம் வெறும் டெம்பிள் டவுன்ஸ். இப்போ எல்லா இடத்துலையும் வந்து தேர் ப்ராப்ளம்ஸ் ஆர் டேக்கிங் பிளேஸ். Why did we allow this to happen? Why are they allowing it to happen before taking any corrective actions? 8 வருஷம் is too long a period to bring police reforms or the legal reforms. Where is the disconnect, madam? What is your opinion on that, ma'am?
Thank you for the question, G. In fact, நான் ஆக்சுவலா என்னோட இனிஷியல் டாக்ல நிறைய கவர் பண்ணியிருந்தேன். பட் ஐ வில் ஜஸ்ட் பாயிண்ட் a few things. One, ஒரு டஃப் ஆக்ஷன் நம்ம நினைக்கும் போது we are seeing India is in isolation and we are seeing we have a Muslim problem. Countries starting from Israel down to Germany, Austria, everywhere this is a problem. And everywhere they are consolidating and everywhere they are pumping in money. Everywhere they are taunting. So, இப்போ you take Europe, for example, the invasion by immigration and sonene, they are going there and they are refusing to be integrated into their societies, and they are challenging them, raping women, all these grooming squads and whatnot. இதெல்லாமே taunting exercise தான். இது எதுக்கு பண்றானா, there is a society, a larger society that's oblivious to what's happening. அவளுக்கு ஒண்ணுமே தெரியாது what's happening behind, and they are the tree huggers, the child of the 60s revolutions. So they think everything is perfect in a perfect world. These are poor refugees coming into our country. We have a moral responsibility to look up. இது எப்படி இருக்குன்னா, இந்த கண்ட்ரீஸ்ல எல்லாமே ஒரு நேஷனலிஸ்டிக் ஃபோர்ஸ்ன்றது has not become a critical a tipping point. அந்த கிரிட்டிக்கல் மாஸ் வரல இன்னும். இப்போ கூட if you've seen France, for example, Marine Le Pen was the nationalist leader who was talking against Muslims. சரியா? And but last election she didn't have a chance. Macron came. And அதுக்கப்புறம் இந்த எலெக்ஷன்ல என்ன ஆச்சு? Over his term, stricter anti-Muslim or stricter pro-French. As a result, a far-right person couldn't come to power. இதுதான் reality of the world. If you play it too much, then you will tilt the table. எதுக்குன்னா, a majority of Indians, even today, still don't get this. நம்மளோட வேர்ல்டு இந்த ட்விட்டர்ன்ற ஒரு வேர்ல்டு எடுத்து பார்த்தா, because we are part of all these Hindu groups, we think we have the critical mass to turn the table, to get Modi ji to take strict action and still come to power next time. No, it doesn't happen. A lot of Hindus are still oblivious to the fact that all this is happening, and நம்மள மாதிரி tune in இன்னும் ஆகல. But they think Modi is a good person and it's a good government, clean administration. In comparison, இதுக்கு முன்னாடி இந்த government was very bad. அதனால they are voting. And a lot of people are voting because they have a new toilet in the house, they have a new house, they've got gas, they've got power, they've got roads. இந்த மாதிரி காரணங்கள்லாம் பண்றவா இருக்கா. The Hindu cause and vote பண்றவா ஒரு மைனாரிட்டி தான். ஸோ அவளுக்கு ஒரு மென்டல் பீஸ் ஆஃப் மைண்ட் கொடுக்கணுன்றதுனால, if Modi ji took a wrong action, I'm not saying wrong, but if he went with an iron hand, in fact, there is no legal provision to do that, to curb them, because they are more in numbers or more consolidating. There is only one legal system in India. ஸ்டோன் பெல்டர்ஸ்க்கு அவளுக்கு என்ன கிரிமினல் ஐபிசி கோடு போட முடியுமோ அதுதான் போட முடியும். அது போட்டு எத்தனை பேரை ஜெயிலில் போட முடியுமோ அது பண்ணிட்டு தான் இருக்கா. We are taking legal courts everywhere. யாரும் except a state like Karnataka and Kerala, where non-BJP government is ruling. Every other state this is happening, action is also taken. But our problem is, we are part of a group of people who want to move from one bubble to the other and travel emotionally one problem to the other, and without actually following up on, okay, what happened to that issue then? What happened to that person who was killed in Bengal, a BJP worker? Then what? Of course, in Bengal, nothing happens because it is a strange government there. But in most cases, pinned, and they are given punishment, they are sent to jails, but that information doesn't come through. I think that is a failure of Modi government, because நம்ம எடுக்கிற action எல்லாமே, it should be visible. And I think they are not investing too much into it, because the people who think that they should be punished are still a minority. And this is the reality. நீங்க பேசி பாருங்க, you go out and talk to 10 people who support Modi. I'm not talking about Modi haters. People who support Modi, and see how many of them are pro-Hindu.
With you, but unfortunately enough, it's not visible enough what they are doing, and they have allowed this to happen. on this land grabbing and all this money flow. I think still they have to do a lot more on the money inflows. FCNR Act is there since 1973. And of course, for the last 10-12 years, they are more strict. நம்ம ஒரு 500 ரூபா உண்மை பேங்க்ல கேட்டோம்னாக்கா நம்மள 100 கொஸ்டின் கேட்கறான். அவன் கடல் மாதிரி பணம் ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க ஒரு இடத்துலயும் டு டூ ஆல் ராங் ஆக்ட்ஸ். இதுல எதுக்கு வந்து why are they not taking strict actionங்கிறது தெரியல எனக்கு basically. I don't know.
That's a very legitimate question. And the fact is that a lot of this happened before Modi came on board. A lot of the system corruption in the sense நான் எடுக்கிறது சொல்லல, சிஸ்டமை கரப்ட் பண்றது, ஹேக் பண்றது, லூப் ஹோல்ஸ் கண்டுபிடிக்கிறது, நியூ லாஸ் கொண்டு வருது, participatory bonds மாதிரி கொண்டு வருது. So a lot of the illegal money had already been in India. Demonetization அதுக்கு தானே பண்ணதே. வந்து second year பண்ணாரு, third year பண்ணாரு. So a lot of the rot had already happened. இப்போ அதுக்கு ஒரு systemic correction தான் பண்ண முடியும். You can take strict measures ன்னா அதுக்கு உண்டான legal system backing கிடையாது நம்மளுக்கு. ஸோ கான்ஸ்டியூஷனல் அமெண்ட்மெண்ட்டே கொண்டு வர வேண்டியிருக்கு பல விஷயங்களுக்கு. ஸோ எனக்கு தெரிஞ்ச ப்ரையாரிட்டி பேஸில் தான் மோடிஜி ஒர்க் பண்ணுறாரு. வாட் இஸ் த டாப் ப்ரையாரிட்டி? செக்யூரிட்டி ஃபார் த கண்ட்ரி, அது பார்க்குறது. அந்த மாதிரி அப்புறம் கோவிட் வந்திருக்கு, ஸோ அது ப்ரையாரிட்டி ஷிஃப்ட் ஆகிருக்கு. ஸோ எனக்கு தெரிஞ்ச இட் இஸ் நாட் சம்திங் தட் தே ஹேவ். ஆனால் வர சோர்சஸ் கட் பண்ணால இல்லையா, தட் இஸ் த மோஸ்ட் இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் திங். அதுக்கப்புறம் உண்டாயிருக்கிற டேமேஜ் இப்போ கண்ட்ரோல் பண்ணுறதுன்றது ரொம்ப கஷ்டமான காரியம். ஆனால் they are working on a priority basis and we will get there. எனக்கு தெரிஞ்சு it is not going to happen in the next 10-20 years at least. The whole reversal of the system. இப்போ இருக்கிறத வச்சு பண்றது நிறைய கான்ஸ்டியூஷனல் அமெண்ட்மெண்ட்ஸ் தேவைப்படுறது. எனக்கு தோன்றது மோடிஜி will probably wait for the next term to start introducing constitutional changes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Sreevidya, and thank you so much for enlightening us. I had almost lost hopes this morning looking at all these rioting across the country, and I felt like India as a country is losing this battle against Islamization. But hearing you talk today, my hope is coming back. Thank you so much for that. On that note, the person that just spoke before me, BG, he asked the exact same question that I wanted to ask. So pretty much most of my question has been answered. My question is, why is the center not keeping the state government accountable for the law and order situation of the state? There's, especially in a state like Tamilnadu, where the law and order situation is completely messed up. West Bengal, law and order is completely messed up. Even petty crimes, the people who perform these crimes, they don't get tried in the court, and they don't go to jail, or they don't see any kind of consequences. So when there is a larger riot-like situation, it is very easy to start mobilizing these petty thieves into the riot and blow up the riot out of proportions. So why don't we just go bottom up instead of trying to go top down? Isn't it easier to go bottom up, address some of these petty crimes, so there is the top level management of the country becomes easier?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. But law and order is a state subject. It's not a central subject at all. So if something is happening within a state, the first thing the HM can do is to ask explanation and ask for a report. And this report should come from the chief minister or from the governor of the state. But center doesn't have any direct hold. And if you look at the crime, the sort of crime that we are talking about, they are far moved from a personal sort of crime, an individual crime. A lot of it is organized with external funding. And you will see that you take movies, for example, media is a crime scene. It's because they're getting money from somewhere else. So there is scope for the central investigating agencies like NIA to be positioned in these states, in these places, and they're taking proactive measures. Center is using, agencies to sort of bring some parity of law and order in these states by curtailing the money trail and the terror sleeping cells and so on. But about the other issues like, the anti-Hindu comments or other sorts of crimes of murder of BJP activists and so on, that's not going to happen until we take, as a country, we take a decision to move, bring in a shared responsibility of law and order, so that if a state fails, then the center can step in. Right now, the center does not have those powers. But there is a catch in this. The government that is dismissed maximum state governments is Congress government, and so the only government. Yeah, the only government who dismissed most of the state governments is Congress. So if there is a situation arises in future that a Congress-sponsored party is and then this law is the state law and order thing is a shared responsibility, then you can imagine what they will do with that power. So if Modi ji has to amend constitution to bring shared responsibility, or even center to take over law and order, then first of all, it'll get the country into some sort of a boil. But if we eventually get there, Modi ji will have to ensure that the democratic order currently used in India will also have to change, so that people like Congress will not come back to power. That's a very long-term road. So if we can't do anything now without risking the next election at the center and the states, BJP had to really work hard to get to the majority area in the Rajya Sabha and the upper part of the parliament, the upper body. So the issue is that there is one election or the other always going. So when is a good time to bring a constitutional amendment to create a shared model of law and order? I don't know. But that is a solution. In the interim, that is a solution they could think about. So we should probably start creating a discourse around that and, a dialogue, and start pressurizing, lobbying, pressurizing, or creating pressure groups and making the government to come to some sort of a shared model. So if it happens as a result of demand from public, then it's less likely that there will be backlashes from the communist groups. But until we get to a critical mass on that, it's going to be difficult. With the kind of people in the think tanks now, at least the visible ones in the media, they're all into the TRP, and if it's a YouTube channel, then they are about money, so they only want to talk what's going wrong with Modi government or against Muslims. And we have to there are think tanks, but most of them are not in the public view, who will be creating what was called in the communist parlance as manufacturing consent. So we have to manufacture consent to pressurize the government to amend constitution so that this will become a shared responsibility. Yeah, so that's the only way out of this problem. And it is a menace. And the other way to get to this is to make sure that the non-BJP government states today will have an expiry date, and a very close one at that, which is what I think they are doing at the moment. That's the best bet for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have come to the final part. I'm sorry if I am not able to approve requests for some speakers, because we are at the fag end, and I don't want to hold Sreevidya Ji for a long time. It's been 2 hours. Definitely, we will have her back in our Spaces forum to discuss other topics and also dwell much more deeper. The way I like her is that she gives a 360-degree perspective of the problem from all angles. Some maybe would have not even thought of in that angle. So அதுதான் எனக்கு ரொம்ப பிடிச்சிருக்கு. Plus also she not only just addresses the problem, but she gives that how to tackle the problem, the solutions, which is the best part we should all know. So in that way, thanks so much, ma'am. I just request Vaishnavi to give a thank you note, and then we can end this session. Vaishnavi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think most of us follow you in Twitter, but I think it was very, very enlightening to hear you today in Spaces. And I think this is your first, your maiden space experience. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We started off with Nupur Sharma's statement row, but I think we've covered pretty much everything about the BJP government politics and, state politics. And a lot of talk on the Muslim community. I think we should reserve that topic. There's more to discuss, and I'm sure many more questions to ask you. I think for another day very soon. I hope you will come back to us whenever we have such discussions. And I think, like AK said, a 360-degree discussion is what made us all very enlightened today. I mean, I very much enjoyed the discussion, the entire discussion. Thank you so much, ma'am, and looking forward to having you here very, very soon in another, probably I would personally like it to be about the Muslim community, but I'm sure there would be many other interesting topics to discuss as well. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Such a wonderful session we had with you, and can't wait to host one more session with you as early as possible. I'll get your timings and we will organize one. Thanks for coming. Thanks for staying us so late and giving us your time. இங்க இருக்கிறவங்க எல்லாருக்கும் listeners and all the people who have come here and tweeted about our space and listened. எல்லாருக்குமே thanks. Please support us always. With this, we'll conclude this session. Thanks, Sreevidya ma'am.
Thank you
Hope
for
to
the
hear you soon.
opportunity, AKJ. Thank you
No,
for the
it is our
opportunity.
opportunity எங்களுக்கு தான் ஆக்சுவலா உங்களோட பேசுறதுக்கு உங்க கருத்தை கேட்கறதுக்கு. Thank you so much. Thanks
Jay
everyone.
Vikas, thank you. Jai Hind.